I'd like to thank the grace of heaven, the virtues of the masters, the compassion and mercy of the grand predecessors, senior transmitters, lecturers, temple masters, and everyone for giving me this opportunity today to talk about the Tao Te Ching, the classic of the way and virtue, chapter 50. Okay, chapter 50. All right, the title, you should open up the overview file, the first Word file, the smaller one. Okay, chapter 50. It's the title of this chapter is called Life and Death. Yeah, so of all the 81 chapters of the entire classic, I mean, Lao Tzu talked about, death, in other chapters, but this is specifically about, our life and death. That's it. Okay, it's very specific. All right, and so it's very interesting. Okay, so it's a medium length chapter. It's divided into two sections. First half. Based on this overview, it's 7 phrases, and he's specifically talking about a certain category of group of people or of living. Okay, and then that's the first half. Then the second half, he's talking about the remaining group. Okay, or remaining category. Okay, even though he doesn't explicitly say it. Well, he does, but on line 8 or phrase 8, but he doesn't say how many. But anyway, we'll see when we get into the outline. But he's talking about this last remaining group. Okay, so it's basically this is a two section chapter. Okay. All right, now you open up the outline file. Okay. All right, so you guys should open it up and let's follow through. Okay, it's 11 pages. Okay. All righty. Okay. All right, so it's the first couple lines is coming into life, entering death. The followers of life, 3 and 10. The followers of death, 3 and 10. Okay, all right. So basic meaning is first phrase. Okay, coming into life, entering death. Okay, so from a universal level, from the Tao perspective, at the universal level, if you will, scope level, to come into life is to transition from the spiritual realm, or we can say from the Tao, to the material realm, okay, to phenomena, okay. To enter or go into death is to transition from the material realm back to the spiritual or the return trip, okay. So it's 2 parts. Coming into life, it's entering from the Tao or coming from the Tao. You say that's the invisible, the intangible realm, into the material realm, and then entering death is the return trip. So it's a full circle. Okay, it's a circle. Okay, all right. So that's another way of looking. Well, what Lao Tzu is trying to get at is, he's trying to present to us a different, a more grander view, the bigger picture view of what life and death is. Okay, all right. So another meaning is these are the 2 transitions, that is entering into life or coming to life and entering death. These are the 2 transitions that form the great circle of life and death. It's a circle, it's a cycle. Okay, all right. Additional meaning is that, so the focus is on what happens while we are in this world, while we are still alive and living. The question is, how do we use this gift of life? Okay, This opportunity called life, what is its purpose? This is the central focus of this chapter, okay, on the question of life and death, all right? Okay, so further understanding is when we come from the Tao to this material world, right? The Tao is the natural home of all spiritual entities, including all sentient beings. So our natural home is not the physical plane, okay? It's not the material world. Rather, it is the Tao. That's the, you can say our permanent home, permanent realm, right? Because that's where we originally came from. We didn't originally come from this material world, right? Okay. So when we finally make the return trip, it is to go back to our original natural home. So death means going home, not something to grieve over, not something to fear, but a transition that is not so different from the original transition that brought us here to the material world in the first place. So Lao Tzu is just trying to get us. Okay, and at the very end of this outline, at the conclusion, I'll be telling a story, okay, that sort of illustrates this. Okay, all right. Let's go. Let's see the second half. Of the phrase of this line is okay. Is okay. Well, here's okay. So the next line is the followers of life 3 and 10. Okay. So what is followers of life? Okay, here it is. It's I'm near the bottom of page 1. Okay, it's like the last bullet point. Okay, so literally, Sun Tzu, or that's the follower or disciple of life. That's what literal translation is. It may sound like a positive thing. Yeah, positive thing. Don't you want to be a disciple of life? Of course, right? Follower of life, right? But in fact, Lao Tzu was saying the opposite. It's a negative quality. Means those people, and why is it negative quality? He's using this terminology, followers or disciples of life, is to refer to those people who cling to life excessively, people who hold on to life in an excessive way. Okay, in the following aspects. 1, okay, a depiction of fearful mentality. That is, they fear everything, fearing the possibility that things can go wrong, anxious and worried about the possibility that things could go wrong, and therefore not even making an attempt. Just want to hold on to a safe existence, just want to hold on to the security of life. Someone who values safety above all, never takes chances with anything, and thus misses out on much of what the world has to offer or life has to offer. So if you never try anything, you will never experience anything new. All right. So that's an excessive, extreme, to the extreme end. Okay. The second aspect, okay, is this is at the bottom and the bottom of page 1 and the top of page 2. Okay, is people in this category, the disciples or followers of life, may wish for better things in life, but because they are so risk averse, they never actually try. So this excessive fearful mentality sacrifices the fun, the discovery, and the learning opportunities that can occur when you do take a chance and do something different. Okay, so it's an opportunity cost. Okay, you miss out. And the third is a trade-off. There is increase in security, yeah, but for a decrease in the zest for life. Okay, zest means the I don't want to say fun, but in the all the potential good experiences, or even fun that you could have, right, in life. Okay, so missing out on what the world has to offer. That's what. Okay, the fearful mentality is like retreating or hiding from the world, always feeling alarmed. Okay, so the disciples of life or followers of life, from Lao Tzu's perspective, living a life like this is a wasted opportunity. It is all for being safe and secure. Yeah, sure, we all want to be safe and secure, but not so much to the point of missing out on what living life is all about, right? So there's a balance. So once again, you don't go to the extremes, right? It hints at the middle path, okay, which we will get to at the last file, the last file, okay, the Excel file. All right. So what's 10? 十有三. That means 10 in. Okay, literally it means in 10 there are 3, or 3 out of 10, or 30%. Okay, that's what it means. Okay, literally. All right. So the basic meaning of the last phrase is the followers of death, 3 and 10. Okay. Okay. So, sorry. No, still the second and third. I'm sorry. The followers of life, 3 and 10. His basic means they're about at the world level. So basically, Lao Tzu is saying, I mean, don't take it as exact figure. Oh, it's actually 30% or 3 out of 10, etc. This is just Lao Tzu's way of expressing. It's like an average. It's like a broad estimate. Okay, it's like that. All right. So okay, 3 out of 10. All right. So what Lao Tzu's now, before when I in this section, I'm going to talk about. I'll talk about it later. That there could be overlaps between different categories. Okay, this is the first category. People who cling to life excessively. People who are excessively fearful of things, for safety, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, all right. So this is one category, the first category. So he's saying that they're roughly 3 out of 10, 30%. I mean, but there could be overlap between the other categories. So it's not exactly, hard number. Okay, all right. So the point is, from Lao Tzu's perspective, he's saying out of 10 people, roughly there are 3 who are too cautious to a fault, who usually play it too safe. Okay, all right. Okay, then there's another meaning for the follower of life. It means that it's one extreme form of living. Okay, so it's a type of living category. Okay, living. Okay, so another further understanding is the people who are followers of life are really not in accord with the Tao because they cling to life too much. They become attached to the material world, to forms, to a very narrow view of living, okay, of life or living. Okay, so that's not in accordance with the Tao. All right. Okay. Then the last 2 phrases, which is the followers of death, 3 and 10. Okay. All right. So what is follower of death? Okay, there was the follower of life or disciple of life. Then what's follower of death or disciple? Death disciple. That kind of sounds deadly. Okay, who would want to be a follower of death or disciple of death? Does that mean that that's a terrorist? Okay, no. Okay, this is really a complete opposite of a follower of life. So we said the follower of life is what? Who is excessively cautious, right, or fearful, for safety, etc. So what's the opposite? It's people who are excessively reckless or careless. Okay, so those who throw caution to the wind, trying out things just for the thrill, engaging in dangerous activities such as taking I mean, give you an example, mind altering drugs, leading to consequences of addiction, health, etc., whatever, but they don't care. They just want to try it for the thrill, if you will. Okay, and kind of how can I say, it's a counter intuitive, like a passive aggressive. It's actually the people, the second category, the disciples of death or followers of death. are the group of people who actually have a totally contrary view to the first category, right? Who are overcautious. They just want to prove, you can say that's their way of showing, of proving that they're not scared, that they're not overly cautious, that they're not fearful. Okay, so they would try all different things, throwing caution to the wind, i.e., becoming reckless, careless, etc., as a way of showing that, hey, they're not fearful. You see? So that's the other extreme. You get it? So that's the other extreme. Okay. Now, we're not talking about extreme sports, okay? Because some people say, well, what about extreme sports? People, you know, try out these, I don't know, whatever. What's an extreme sport? Bungee jumping, skydiving, stuff like that, or I don't know, deep sea diving or whatever. Are they really testing the? Well, you can say they are testing the limits of physical endurance or whatever. Okay, it may not be, reckless. I mean, they could do it under, careful control, conditions or etc. So it's not that. Okay, it just means generally it just means people who take it to the extreme opposite of the first category of people who are overly cautious, that they just want to try out any different things just for the thrill or just for risk. Some people like risk. So anyway, so these type of people generally are very aggressive. They're headstrong, right? They're very, you can say, stubborn, right? Impatient and big risk takers. Okay, all right. Now, so what Lao Tzu is also saying, say this group of people, the people who are excessively, we say reckless, etc., or careless. Okay, they're about 3 out of 10 too, or about 30%. Okay, so that's roughly, the same, balances out the the first group, the disciples of or followers of life. Okay, so out of the 10, there are 3 who live an excessively reckless life, who take too many chances. Okay, throw caution to the wind, risk everything, not just about excuse me, we're not talking about adrenaline junkies, but those who are careless. All right. So once again, just like the first category, being a follower of death or disciple of death is another extreme form, as of living, the opposite extreme of the followers of life. Okay, so the people who now this group of people who are followers of death are also not in accord with the Tao, because they only seek thrills and adventure. They too are attached to the material world, to forms, to another narrow view of living, right? That's the other extreme. But they're also attached, right, to, even though it's a different form of attachment, right? But they're also attached, right, to seeking thrills, in the material world, etc. All right, okay. Now, there's another meaning of the 10, 3 in 10, or, now, some people translate as 10 plus 3. That's what it means. Okay, you can say, yeah, yo could means half or addition. Okay, so if you translate that way or interpret it that way, it to combine, right? 10 plus 3 is 13, right? It means it's the 7 emotions and the 6 desires. So 7 plus 6 is 13. Now, I'm not going to go into the details of that, but from other classes and from previous classes, we know that what are some of the causes of our desires, causes of cravings, and then cleaning and cravings, okay, to do things, right? With, whatever, okay. It's a lot of it is due to desires. As a matter of fact, almost all of it's due to desires and emotions, okay. So because we human beings have emotions and desires, so if we can't control them, okay, then that's where we could potentially lead to trouble, and then could potentially lead to these two extreme forms of living, or the ultra cautious to the extremely careless or reckless. Okay, all right. So deeper understanding is then on the worldly level or scope. Why do we have to be born in this material world in the first place? Yeah, okay. Well, because of karma. And because we have created karma, due to karma, we will be born into the material realm, okay? Material realm, all right? Okay. And as a matter of fact, the emotions and desires are part of the link that causes us to create karma. Okay. Now, specifically, right? This is at near the bottom, second, the last two bullet points, okay? Page 2 is, why did we create karma? Because we became bound or trapped or tied down by our 7 emotions and 6 desires, which caused us to create karmic seeds or plant karmic seeds, which then led to the endless cycle of coming into life and entering death and repeating the cycle again and again as part of the 6 paths of reincarnation. Okay, thus the cycle of birth, death, and rebirth is a result of the 12 links of dependent origination. Okay, the 12 nindanas. Okay, you can see Appendix C, but I'm not going to detail because other classes have talked about it. So that's in the one of those 12, in the 12, those 12 links, one of the 12 links, there is a category called craving. Okay, craving and then clinging. Okay, that's number 8 is craving, number 9 is cleaning, and then number 10 is becoming. That means it takes shape, okay, or it's taken form. Okay, so because we have emotions and desires, that's what leads to craving, or number 8 of the 12 links. Okay, so that's why. All right, okay, so that's another thing. Okay, so last point implication is, as long as we do not keep matters or things in our minds, then the karmic seeds will not be planted. So that's the key. Okay, all right, so as long as our minds are empty of karmic seeds, then it's not necessary to come into life and enter death. All right, so the key is, we don't want to become attached. When they say keep matters or things, that's when it becomes attached. That's the clinging part. Okay, we cling to it. Right. Okay, so the key is, yeah, we living in this material world. There are going to be, matters or conditions, situations that arises that you need to resolve it, or need to respond to them. Okay, that's okay. That's okay. The key is you don't become attached to that. Okay, and keep, that is to keep it in your mind. Okay, then that's the cleaning part. Clean, C-L-I-N-G, cleaning part, and that's part of the 12 links. Okay, and that's what starts the whole chain of karma. Okay, all right. So it will also be easier without clinging or attachments. It will be easier to return to our birthless and vanishingless Buddha nature. We talked about that, that concept of wu-wei, the non-attachment, non-condition, right, in previous chapters, 40, I think it's 48, 47, even going back to 39. Okay, so I don't want to get into go into detail, but that's what it means. Okay, so the key is, you don't cling. That is, non-attached. Okay, all right. So at the worldly level is what the two categories of living in common in this first 2 lines or 2 sentences. In common is the lack of moderation. Remember, they're both extremes, right? They both lack balance, and that is contrary to the Tao, which advocates a middle path of living in moderation, not too cautious and not too careless. Okay, so it is good to be careful, but not to be too careful, where you keep holding yourself back and end up doing nothing or stagnating. Okay. Now, it is good to move forward. Yes, it is good to move forward, but not to be too careless where you end up stumbling or tripping over yourself. So that's the other extreme. Okay, so at the universal level is that because there is birth, then there must be death, right? Beginning and end, all right? So the most important thing is to understand the original cause of coming into life, birth, okay? And then get rid of it, okay? That cause, okay? And the key to avoid coming into being is not to create karmic seeds, okay? Is to break the chain of the 12 links of dependent origination, or the 12 indhanas. Okay, so other classes have talked about that, so I don't need to talk about that, but that's the basic idea. Okay, the third sentence is, okay, so I'm in near the middle of the top third of page 3. Those whose lives are moved toward death, also 3 and 10. Okay, so this is a new category now that that Lao is bringing in. Okay, so basic meaning is, Linus, this is the third category of living where people come into this life intending to, quote, live it up, unquote, excessively, and move toward death as a result. As a result, okay, and there are about 3 and 10, or 30%. Okay, people are like that. So another meaning is, these are the people who want to get the full enjoyment of life, who want excessive enjoyment of life. Now, this category of living is not about being too cautious or too reckless, but about being excessively overindulgent, too self-indulgent, too undisciplined and unrestrained in the pursuit of material pleasure. So that's the other category. Okay, so now we have Lao's introducing the third category of type of living or people. This group, they're not the too cautious or the too reckless group. They just want to enjoy. They want just to enjoy life to the max, to the fullest. Overindulge, right? Okay, so anyway, and undisciplined, and that's another category. Okay, so now that's not to say between these three groups there are overlaps. Of course there are, but okay, but we're just generalizing here. Okay, people in this category of living seek to live life so much that they burn out once again. Once again, this is a repeating thing about too much of a good thing that can be detrimental. Remember, the line says, those whose lives are moved toward death, right? So yeah, they're rushing headlong toward, you say, early death by their overindulgence or self-indulgence or undisciplined and unrestrained pursuit of material pleasure. Okay, so what happens is when you overindulge, it numbs or dulls the senses. You end up not losing the ability to experience your life completely because you keep stimulating your senses with endless sensory overload, and thus you damage yourself physically, okay? Not just mentally too, but physically. Okay, and so it negatively impacts your health, leading to early death. Overindulgence can lead to all kinds of health issues, right? Creating health risks and even hasten death. For example, obesity, right? If you overindulge in food, right? Okay, overindulge in alcoholism, et cetera, right? Okay, so, all right. So this, once again, this category of overindulgently living is another extreme form, right? It's another extreme form of living. Okay, so this category of living is also contrary to the Tao because it is also an attachment to the material world, to forms, to another narrow view of life or living, right? Okay, so I'm at the bottom, page 3. The 7 emotions, the 7 emotions and 6 desires of the people in this third category of living have become unrestrained and undisciplined. Okay, so now that's taking the 6 and 7, the 13. Okay, another interpretation of the 13 is that the people in this category, third category, okay, their desires and emotions are totally unrestrained, undisciplined. They just go all out. It doesn't matter, right? Okay. All right, so top of page 4, the implication. So, as with the previous 2 categories of living, right, this third category, there are about 9 out of 10 people who live life excessively cautious, excessively reckless, or excessively overindulgent, right? The 3 and 10, 3 and 10, 3 and 10. So roughly 9 out of 10 in this world falls into one of these 3 groups, or some overlap of these 3. Okay, so that Lao Tzu doesn't mention the remaining 1 out of 10. Okay, so that leaves just 1 out of 10, or about 10% remaining, the 4th category, which we will talk about in the second half of this chapter. So this 4th category of living are who? Well, if you're not overly excessively cautious, reckless, or self-indulgent, or attached to this material world, then you must be the Tao cultivators, right? Now, Lao Tzu doesn't explicit, well, even though he hinted at, which is two sentences down this chapter, but he hinted at, okay, but they're relatively rare compared to the other 3. Okay, so this 3 categories. So this 4th category is a life accordance to Tao, in accordance to Tao, because they, 1, move forward in life with a speed that is neither too slow, that means nothing gets done, nor too fast, too reckless, right? This is the opposite of the first 2 categories of living, that is the followers of life or death. Okay, lines 2 and 3 above. Second, cherish the simple life of contentment and humility, and practice the simplicity of the nameless. Remember, that's chapter 46, chapter 39, and chapter 37. Okay, they talked about that. So this is the opposite of the 3rd category of living, which is we're just talking about people who want to overindulge, right? Okay, or live life to the fullest, right? Live fast, die young, right? Okay, so anyway, all right, so that's okay. So the key point is, this means, from Lao Tzu's perspective, that a vast majority of the people in the world, roughly 90%, live a life that is contrary to the Tao, and a small minority, roughly 10%, that is in accord with Tao. So why is this so? Okay, so the next line, this is the last line of section 1, is for what reason, or why. That's another way of saying why. For what reason is the ancient way of asking. Okay, it's why. Okay, modern why. Okay, because they live lives of excess. Yeah, excess just means extreme. Okay, to the extremes. All right. Okay, so yeah, the last word here in Chinese, "hou." Okay, literally it means thick. Okay, thick. Okay, it could mean deep or profound, substantial, but in this context, it's like to be in the thick of it, to be in the most active or intense part. Okay, that's what it means. All right. So the basic meaning of this line is, Lao Tzu is referring to the first 3 categories of living. Okay, why is it that most people, about 9 and 10, are in these 3 categories? Okay, the first one is the followers of life, right, or disciples of life. They're risk averse and shy away from everything. They're hyper cautious with a fear-based mentality. Second category of living is followers of death. They act in risky and self-destructive ways, excessively aggressive, bold, and reckless, leading to unnecessary, dangerous pursuits. Then the third category, those whose lives move toward death, are the ones who live fast and burn out, right? Live fast, die young, right? Overindulgence and excessive pleasure seeking. Okay. So another category is that these 3 categories of living are defined by excess. The first category is excessive caution. Second category is excessive risk. Third category is excessive self-indulgence. Actually, just one more, but we'll get to that later. Okay, there's also fear, by the way. Okay, anyway, all right. Okay, so additional meaning is that excess is the common factor that tied together all 3 categories of living. Okay, so these first 3 categories of living are all contrary to the Tao, because they are all an attachment to the material world, to forms, to narrow and extreme views of life or living. So in Lao Tzu's view, 9 out of 10 people are not living in accordance to the Tao. Okay. Now the deeper meaning of whole excess means you desire. It means really excessive indulgence over it. It means you desire to eat the best food, wear the best clothes, live the most comfortable, do whatever, whenever one day. It just means overindulgent, unrestrained emotions and desires, etc. Okay. All right. So deeper. I'm in the top page 5. Is this? Okay. When we have unrestrained and undisciplined temperament and emotions, then that is moving towards an early demise. We will be heading in the direction of death. Okay, so we got to be careful. So the Tao in living is the path of moderation and avoidance of extremes and excess. Okay, recall. Therefore, the sages eliminate extremes and excess. That's from last line of chapter 29. Okay. All right. So while living, we must pursue what is the most worthy or most worthwhile. People in this material world need to be active. That's a fact. We have to be active to provide benefit to the sentient beings, such as voluntary and voluntary aware. So we can't be overly cautious or overindulge. You still have to be active, move, to do things to help people. Okay, so help sentient beings. So by providing benefit to health to sentient beings. But why is that important? Okay, why is that type of activity important or significant? It's because when we provide benefit to sentient beings, people can restrain their 7 emotions and 6 desires. And in doing so, they are headed towards the direction of life, which is to live a life in accordance with the Tao. Now, that's the 4th category. Okay, so that is the most ideal. Okay, now we're in section 2. Okay, so he said, all right, I'm about the middle of page 5. Okay, so for I have heard of those who are good at cultivating life. Okay, traveling on land, they do not encounter rhinos or tigers. Entering into an army, they're not harmed by weapons. So these people are invisible, right? Invincible. The people who are good at cultivating life. Now that's the superficial meaning. Okay, that's not what it means. Okay, so just FYI, it's fine from the second section. This is the second half now. He's using metaphors. Lao Tzu is using metaphors, so we should not use too literal a meaning here. Okay, he's all using metaphors here. Okay, to describe this last category of living. Okay, so this is a description. This is the 5th bullet point in this section. Okay, it's the description of the 4th category of living of those people, that is 1 out of 10, who have mastered the art of living the Tao life. That's what it means, who are good at cultivating life. Okay, people are good at. Okay, so for the next 4 lines, this is about the last category of living in accordance with the Tao. This last group of people are uncommon because they are cultivators of Tao. All right. So although this group of people is uncommon, the remainder of this chapter is a metaphorical description of these people in this last category of living. Okay. So these metaphors describe social situations that are connected to human nature, or the social condition, the human condition. So they are very applicable for us today. All right. So I'm at the top of page 6. All right. Let's look at. Let's see. Well, just remember the translation here says, traveling on land, they do not encounter rhinos or tigers. Okay, so the word for rhino, I'm at the bottom, last bullet point of page 5, is it's any single horn animal. Okay, that's what a rhino is. I mean, it doesn't have to be a rhinoceros. And then the top bullet point, the first bullet point of page 6, tiger. Okay, that's second tiger. So the meaning, the second bullet point of top of page 6, is the meaning of beasts, which is rhinos and tigers. It's a metaphor for any danger, such as dangerous events, life situations, people, tasks, etc. All the different sources of negativity and danger. That's what the metaphor is. It doesn't, superficially, it means single horn animal and tigers. That means wild beasts. Okay, so superficially, that's what it means. Yeah, so these Tao cultivators who are in this fourth category of group of people of living, when they traveling on land, they don't meet these wild beasts. That's the literal translation. What it means is it's more metaphorical. Is that in social situations or in the human condition, we will not encounter dangerous situations, events, people, etc. Okay, that's what metaphorically means. Okay, so at the individual level, the people who are Tao cultivators, that is people who are in the fourth category living, do not encounter dangers on their journey of life. Okay, all right. So another meaning is Tao cultivators make meaningful progress in life. That's what traveling on land, on the road means. Okay, travel on the road means, yes, you literally, you travel on the road, but there's also a metaphorical side to it, which is that means we are what? Progressing in that journey of life, that life of cultivation. That's what it means. Okay, so the Tao cultivators make meaningful progress on that journey of life. Yet they remain quite safe in doing so. So that's a very important point, okay, which we'll get to a little bit later. The deeper significance of this line is Tao cultivators are quite safe in traveling through life, that is, on their journey of life. This is the same, though, when they're safe, right? We say they're quite safe, or relatively safe, reasonably safe. This is the same, though, as the first category of living. Remember the followers of life, right? Of people who, what? Have longevity because they live a safe and eventful life. Remember the first category of people is they are excessively cautious. So they cling to life because, they're afraid. They see danger everywhere. Okay. But by taking that position of being excessively cautious or careful, or whatever, they end up not going anywhere, right? Yeah, because it's better to save. It's safe to stay at home or do nothing. Don't try anything new, stuff like that. Okay, don't try out new ideas or new ways or whatever. Okay, so but by taking that position, they don't progress in their journey of life. Whereas in the fourth category, the Tao cultivators, they travel, they do progress on their journey of life, and yet they still remain relatively safe. Okay, so that's different. Okay, so further understanding is this. If this is so, why are the followers of life, that is the first category of people living, not in the same category or the fourth category as the Tao cultivators, right? They're both safe, right? They're both relatively safe, okay? Because Tao cultivators make progress in their journey of life. They attain an aspiration that they have. They enjoy success in attaining a measure of spiritual accomplishment or material achievement. This is what is lacking for the followers of life, the first category. Okay, all right. So it's not excessive caution. Okay, that gets you anywhere. Okay, all right. So now we're talking about the last phrase of this line. That is entering into an army. They are not harmed by weapons. What does that mean? Okay, entering an army. I mean, does it literally mean that? Yeah, you go into the battlefield and you're going to be safe. You're not going to be harmed by my weapons. No. Okay, so I'm at the roughly middle of the page 6, top half. Meaning of entering into an army. Okay, but once again, that's not literal. It means it's a metaphorical. It means a metaphor for entering into the battlefield of social competition. That's the group dynamics. That's the human condition, okay, which means you will encounter friends and enemies. They call them what? Frenemies at the same time, right? So you may have friends, but because you are competing socially, then you're like enemies. Well, at least in that competition, right? Okay, so okay, so the meaning of the last phrase, they are not harmed by weapons, okay? Not harmed by weapons. Once again, it's a metaphor, okay? So I'm right in the middle of page 6. So meaning of not harmed by weapons, 不被甲兵 means it's a metaphor for what? Personal attacks from social competition, rivals, etc., etc., okay? So the meaning of this last phrase is at the social level or society level, in social interactions, the Tao cultivators who have mastered the art of living are protected against the weapons of personal attacks wielded by others, in, like in social competition. So another meaning is attackers in social competition are meddlers. Who are they, right? They're meddlers, naysayers, those who try to sabotage you with false accusations, etc., slanderers, etc., etc., okay? Okay, so the meaning of the another meaning. So what is the battlefield of social competition? Is that you'll have those who are both friends and rivals at the same time, right? So frenemies, okay? So the difference between the fourth and first categories of living, right? The fourth meaning the Tao cultivators, the 1 in 10, and the first category is the disciples or followers of life, okay? Is that 1% out of 10 able to make progress in life, remaining safe, while the safe but not making a lot of progress. Okay. The category are those who are cultivating. Yeah, right, but let me reset this, my audio. Okay, so the higher understanding is reasons why people in the fourth category of living, Tao cultivators, do not encounter dangers on their journey of life or are harmed by personal attacks from people in social interactions are: 1, because their temperament and character are all identical with heaven and humanity, along with the entire cosmos and earth. Remember, we talked about having the minds of the people. I think that's chapter 49, right? Chapter 48, 49, right? Talked about that, right? 2 weeks ago, chapter 49, right? We talked about that, right? Those, let's see. Okay, what I say? They merge their minds for the world, right? Okay, so that's chapter 49, all right? That's in section 1, the very first section. Sages have no constant mind. They take the mind of the people as their mind, right? Okay, so, all right, that's what it means, okay? That's chapter 49. Number 2, because their hearts and minds are merciful, compassionate, similar to blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy. Okay, that's the 5th beatitude of the Sermons on the Mount by Jesus. Okay, that's in Gospel of Matthew. Also in Luke. Luke has this. I think it's Luke chapter 6. Okay, anyway. All right, so same idea. All right, okay. So that's bottom of page 6. Now let's go to top of page 7. Okay, first bullet point is when Tao cultivators practice letting go of all karmic affinities and not let a single thought arise, at that moment, they are truly identical with heaven and humanity. They are at one, as one. In that moment, their spiritual state is already at one with the heavens. Okay, so that's why we talk about letting go of karmic affinities. Okay, and not a single thought arise. So we have to practice that. Okay, so here's the key. The difference, let's see. Okay, here. Okay, so the difference between second bullet point, okay, top page 7. Okay, the difference between the people of the first 3 categories of living and those of the 4th category of living, that is the Tao cultivators, are that they have separated their hearts and minds from the mind of heaven, where the human mind is just a human mind. The mind of heaven is the mind of heaven, each going their separate way. Okay, so that's the difference. Okay, so thus the people of the first 3 categories of living, okay, they become beasts in human clothes. Although they wear clothes, but their hearts and minds are like the beasts, where their thoughts and actions are to cheat, harm, and exploit people. Whereas the minds of the people of the fourth category of living, that is the Tao cultivators, are constantly connected with the mind of heaven and earth. That's having just chapter 49, right? The mind of the of the world, okay? Taking the mind of the people as their mind, okay? All right, that's the same idea, okay? So by being respectful of their own Buddhas, I'm talking about the fourth category, the Tao cultivators, and their true self nature or Buddha nature, they are able to be at one with the heavens. So this is the very ideal. This is very ideal, okay, the very ideal. So this is why people, the fourth category of living, do not encounter dangers in their journey of life and are not harmed by personal attacks from people in social interactions. So you could see summary, part one, that's at page 10, okay, top of page 10, okay. So observe others and yourself. So, okay, so who are the followers of death? Okay, or sorry, of life, the first one, first kind, those who are far from living life to the fullest. So who are the followers of death? Those who take unnecessary risks in life. And those whose lives are moved toward death, third category, they have too much of a good thing, they result in negativity or overindulgence. And then the fourth category is those who are good at cultivating life. That's the ideal and the aspiration, to be free to explore and enjoy life free from worries. Okay. All right. So let's go back to page, page, where am I? Top of page 8. Sorry, middle of page 8. Okay. Which is middle page, sorry, middle page 7. Sorry. Okay. So it's just the next line is rhinos have nowhere to thrust their horns. Tigers have nowhere to clasp their claws. Soldiers have nowhere to lodge or to pierce their blades. Okay. All right. So now there's a character here in the first phrase about horns. Okay, so we say, yeah, rhinos have horns, right? But there is another meaning, okay, metaphorical meaning of horn. It just means any pointed or sharp remark, intended to, hurt, with, you have malicious intent. Okay, all right. So the first phrase, okay, rhinos have nowhere to thrust their horns. This means Tao cultivators are shielded from the dangers. That's the metaphor of the rhino, right? Due to the way they live. Horns in this context are metaphors for the damaging sharpness of criticism or critique, okay? Another meaning is horns are metaphor for people's pointed, sharp remarks about you. That is an attack on your character and reputation, which is a danger like the sharp horns of a rhino. Okay, all right. So additional meanings: when the thoughts, words, and actions of Tao cultivators are consistent with the Tao principles, then this consistency protects them or shields them from the criticism of hypocrisy. You walk, don't talk. You say as you think. You think as the true master. That is, your Buddha nature. Okay, you follow your Buddha nature. In other words, okay. Okay, so further understanding is such criticism, that is the sharp horns, right, the rhinos, would have no basis in reality and would cause no damage even if expressed. Okay, so the horns have no place to thrust. Okay, all right, so now let's go to the middle phrase, which is tigers have nowhere to clasp their claws. Bottom of page 7, top of page 8. Basic meaning is tigers are who? They're metaphors for vicious people, people who have very, you can say, vicious intentions, okay, aggressive, okay, etc. In life, who can cause damage, such as spreading malicious rumors, okay? So So those are the tigers, okay, in the social interactions, okay? So Tao cultivators protect themselves against malicious rumors by aspiring to live with impeccable integrity. This protects them from the tigers that are the dangerous, malicious, or vicious people. Okay, that's the first bullet point of page 8. So additional meaning is that false rumors and outright accusations against Tao cultivators are not taken seriously because people know them, the Tao cultivators. They know how they live a consistent life with integrity. That's why we have to be careful, right? When we're Tao cultivators, we have to be, okay. All right. The further understanding of tigers have nowhere to, clasp their claws is that tigers have nowhere to cause damage with their claws, okay? All right, now let's go to the third phrase, the last phrase, okay, where we're talking about soldiers have nowhere to lodge their blades, okay? So the basic meaning is soldiers. What are soldiers? They're metaphors for the combatants in the arena of social competition, the frenemies, okay? Your rivals, okay? This includes most people in society, all right? Okay. Okay, Tao cultivators do well in competition, but feel no need to be aggressively competitive. Their excellence is natural and forced. That's the Wu Wei part. Remember, we talked about it in chapter 48, right? The highest form of action, right? Et cetera, when you are at one with the action, et cetera. Okay, so that's the natural and enforced. Okay, so Tao cultivators do not have to engage in aggressive competition because they do not need to prove anything to other people, since they only compete against themselves in order to better themselves all the time, right? So that's what the true Tao cultivators are like, right? You only compete against yourself, right? Okay, really, it's against your old self. You're trying to be, a better self again and again. Okay, so they do not have, Tao cultivators do not have to compete and are able to achieve because they are selfless, humble, non-attached, and do not contend with anyone. Now, all these categories, these descriptions of selfless, humble, humility, non-attached, and non-contention with anyone can be found in previous chapters that we did, chapter 7, chapter 8, chapter 48. Okay, so, all right. So the deeper understanding is practicing and following the Tao gives you natural protection against negativity from other people, shielded from sharp criticisms, slanders, vilifications, false rumors, malicious accusations. Okay, so that's what protects us against the sharp horns of the rhinos and the claws of the tigers and the blades of the soldiers. Okay, so that's the metaphor. That's what it is. So higher understanding is because Tao cultivators follow the Tao principles, where these principles have the effect of achieving excellence with seeming little effort, that it looks so easy in people's minds. So this is why there's no need for Tao cultivators to be so aggressively competitive, since their actions are natural and forced, right? Wu Wei, non-attached, non-conditioned, okay? So the implication is there are no opportunities for others to, quote, cut you down in size, unquote, with the blades of one-upmanship, malicious rumors, or pointed criticism. So summary part 2, go to page 10. Second part is when you master the Tao of life and death, you travel, number one, you travel through life safe from attackers, okay, because there are many potential sources of dangers in the world. Number two, criticisms, that's the sharp horns, right, have no power against you. You're consistent because you're consistent in your words and action. Then the claws, the vicious rumors, do not affect you because people know you and dismiss malicious gossip. And lastly, you are protected from personal attacks. That's the blades of the soldiers. Your integrity is an armor shielding you from such weapons. Okay, so that's why it's important to, when we are Tao cultivators, we have to be consistent. We do so naturally, unforced, and also walk the talk, right? Okay. Okay, so we are on, let's see. Okay, so we're the last, third bullet point from the bottom of page 8. Okay, so the key point is Tao cultivators being consistent with the Tao principles are shielded from sharp criticisms, which the rhino horns. Living a consistent life with integrity are protected from malicious words of vicious people. That's the tiger claws. And despite doing very well in competition with natural unforced actions, do not need to be competitive. That's the soldier's blades. So the wild rhinos, malicious people, tigers, vicious people, and soldiers, aggressive competitors, have no way to cause harm, right, to the Tao cultivators. Okay, so we're the last phrase of this chapter. So why is that? For what reason? Why? Because they have no place for death. Okay, all right. So now this time, this is the bottom of page 8, second to the last bullet point. So this time, the question is asking about something different than the above first section. Remember, he also asked why, right? Why? Why is this so? Okay, now how can this one person out of 10 be protected against all the dangers, all the potential negativity in life? How do they live, or how do they protect themselves? That's people in the fourth category. Okay, that's what he's asking. Okay, so the basic meaning, the last bullet point of page 8 is this phrase summarizes everything, but it's not obvious about what it means. It is simple, but also very complex and profound. To have no place for death is a simple phrase that represents a complex answer from the Tao perspective on life and death. Okay, that's what, to have no place. We'll talk a little bit about that a little bit later in this summary part. I think part 3 or 4 and the third file. Okay, so first bullet point, page 9. How can we be sure that this is talking about the Tao perspective on life and death? How can we be sure that Lao Tzu is talking about, this answer, because they have no place for death, is talking about life? Well, the answer is obvious. What's the name of this? What's the title of this chapter? Because this chapter is on life and death. Okay, so we know what Lao Tzu is meaning. Okay, so we can get a glimpse of the Tao of life and death from the first line of this chapter, coming into life, entering death. It is about the great circle where you transition from the Tao, that's the emptiness, the void, that's the essence, to the material world, which is existence or the functions, right? To live out this life, and then upon death, transition back. That's the great circle, okay? Or the great circle of life and death, okay? The great circle of life and death. All right, so third bullet point, page 9, is further understand. From the Tao perspective, all sentient beings are spiritual beings that come into the physical world to live and then return to the Tao. So that's similar to the teaching of Buddhism, where everything arises from emptiness, right? The void, the essence, that comes into existence. That's the forms, the manifestations of it, of the essence, and eventually returns back to the void upon death, non-existence. So the question that becomes, why do we come to live? What is the purpose of coming to this material world to live out a lifetime before returning back to the void, to the Tao? Okay, so here it is, the answer. Okay, all right. Oh, this is kind of long here. Okay. Okay, so the purpose of coming, well, why do we come to live? Because we have a mission, okay? We have a mission. Whether we realize it or not, our mission in coming into life is simple. We are here to learn Tao. We're here to learn, yes. Okay, that's at the generic level, people who are not Tao cultivators. But at the Tao cultivator level, we're here to learn the Tao. the spiritual lessons, even for Tao cultivators, right? It's Tao. I mean, but spiritual lessons more broad, right? It's broader. Okay, Tao is more specific. Okay, all right. So basically, we're here to learn about the Tao. Ideally, that's about the Tao. So that's the purpose of life. That's the purpose of life. Okay, so the great learning of the Tao. That's the first line of great learning, right? In the preface. Okay, so that's Da Xie, it's Tao. Okay, all right. Now, so that's the purpose in life, that we are here to learn about the Tao. Then there's more. Okay, there's more. Then the next purpose, or the follow up to the first purpose, is then to better. Here it is. Okay, to better ourselves. That is to follow the Tao, or cultivate. You say cultivation. Cultivate what? The Tao, the essence, our Buddha nature. Okay, and that's similar to the Great Learnings preface, which is to realize and manifest or reveal our bright virtues. That is the bright virtue, the Buddha nature essence. That's 在明明德. Okay, to and then the next follow on to realize, to cultivate our essence, Buddha nature, which is to realize our true bright virtue, is to help other people to do the same. That is to manifest the Tao to others. That is the practice, the application. Okay, all right. So that's also mirrored in the third phrase of the Great Learning, which is to renovate the people, 在清 or 在心明. Okay, and lastly, to attain the highest excellence, that is to achieve the state of perfection or the enlightenment, and that's the result of our purpose in life, or you can say that's the goal. Okay, so these three steps or three parts, okay, which is the purpose, the essence, or the learning of the Tao, the cultivation of the Tao, to manifest or realize and manifest the Tao, and which is the practice, and to attain the highest level of achievement, is called the three guiding principles. Okay, so in short, we are here to experience life, to cherish each other, and to take our spiritual progress with us back to our point of origin, the Tao. Right. So see summary part 3, page 10 at the bottom. Okay, bottom third of page 10. It's the full circle. That's the great circle of life and death. Okay, so the last phrase talks about having no place for death. In other words, living without the fear of death, being liberated from fear. That's the point about what is having no place for death. What Lao Tzu is saying is that, it's not that the Tao cultivators will not eventually pass away and die. No. He doesn't mean that. He doesn't mean that Tao cultivators are going to be immortals. That is, having no. He's saying that Tao cultivators will live their life fully and their journey of life, but they don't have to fear about the eventual death. So therefore, they're liberated from that fear of death. Now, so when we connect this last line of having no place for death back to the first line of this chapter, which is what? To coming into life, entering death, right? Okay, this relates to the concept of the great circle. That's the great circle, right? You don't have to fear death, because the great circle, this is all part, life, coming into life and entering death. It's all part of this circle, this cycle, if you will. Okay, so the overall message is quite clear, is that when you do not understand the true nature of existence, fear compels you to grasp into life. Remember, I mentioned earlier in the top half of the section, the chapter, first half section, that these first three categories of people of living, overly, extremely cautious, extremely reckless, and extremely overindulgent. Okay. Yes, they all are extremes. Okay. So that's the excess part. But there's another common factor, and that is they all fear death. Okay. They fear death. The first group is pretty obvious, right? They're overly cautious because they think, oh, anything could be a danger to their safety. So because they fear death, so they cling to life. The second group is kind of the counterintuitive point, which is that they live life recklessly to kind of convince themselves that they don't fear death. Get it? Okay, so yeah, it doesn't matter. I'll go, I'll take big risk or whatever, to sort of convince themselves, oh, I don't fear death, even though they do actually fear death. Okay, and then the overindulgent, same thing, right? They're afraid that, oh, I better, I better, eat this food before I die, or I better go to see this place before I die, bucket list or whatever, because they still fear that they can't enjoy everything that they desire to enjoy in this material world before they leave, before they go. Okay, so once again, it's the fear. Okay, so when you fully understand life and death, you will experience spiritual liberation from fear. Okay, so here's the state of fear. This is the bottom of page 10, you see, okay? The state of fear, okay? So that's this. The rhinos, tigers, soldiers, metaphors, right? Okay, all metaphors point to fear. So fear may paralyze you or cause panic, okay? Now, then at the bottom here, it's the state of freedom or spiritual liberation from fear. That is, having no place for death means you realize there's no point in letting the fear of death occupy your mind. So if that's the case, then the rhinos, tigers, and soldiers all lose the ability to harm you. Now, in Tao cultivation, okay, here's in between, you see that the top up direction arrow, and then there's a down direction arrow here on the left. Okay, it's that in Tao cultivation we transition between these two states. Okay, we do transition. Okay, we're not firmly in the state of freedom yet. Okay, because we're not yet sages or Tao masters yet. Okay, so it is always easier to go toward freedom when you can see the terrain clearly. That means you understand the big picture. That this, the cycle of the great circle of birth and death, of life and death. So without guidance or clarity, people can go back and forth between these two states. But with clarity, that means with deeper understanding, clear understanding, it is easier to see when you are trapped in the fear and you have to transition to being free. Okay, so that's what this is. All right. Okay, so all right, so okay, so let's go back to the bottom of page 8. Page 8. No, sorry. The middle of page 9. Sorry. So we're near the end. Okay. So, okay, let's go here. Okay. So it's near the second half, bottom, the 1, 2, 3, 4, third bullet point from the bottom of page 9. Okay. So higher understanding, coming into manifestation from the Tao, from the non-physical, the metaphysical, if you will, to the physical world, it's not some sort of supernatural manifestation. Instead, it's just a natural transition, just like the changing of seasons, right? We're now, in the summer, right? Previously, we were in the spring, and then before that, we're in the winter. Before that was autumn. So now, after the summer solstice from last month, even though we're near the peak of summer, we are going to transition gradually into the fall, autumn, right? So, okay, so that's just a natural cycle, right, of nature. So, second bullet point from the bottom is there are many who have not yet come to the realization. Okay, that's the problem. They don't realize that, hey, coming into life, entering into death, etc. It's just a natural cycle, okay, of this. Okay, so open up your third file, which is the spreadsheet Excel. It's just one page. It's very straightforward. It's okay. It's Lao Tzu, just you can say this is Lao Tzu's perspective on people, life, and death. So on line 4, I have headings like the number, category, journey, consequence. Okay, that's in columns A, B, F, and H. Okay, so on column A, you have 1, 2, 3 for the first categories. That's the 3 and 10. Okay, so that's how you get it. Okay, so 3 and 10 are what? The first category is the followers of life. That's the excessively cautious. Okay, so their journey in life is that they live long, safe, boring, uneventful lives. But what's the consequence? They're fearful, holding on for dear life. Okay, that's the consequence of that type of living. Okay, all right. So it's fear, right? They're fearful. Okay, they don't know. They fear that life, it's too dangerous. There's too many dangers out there. Okay, then the second category, if you look at rows 9, 10, 11, that's 4, 5, 6, that's 3 and 10. They're the followers of death. That is, they what? They take excessive risks or carelessness. Okay, so that's the category. The journey is they live short, careless, reckless, risky lives. Okay, and what is the consequence? It's tragic consequences because they could die too soon with so much thrown away, so much missed opportunities, similar to the first category. All right, okay, it's just that they are too reckless. All right, and then rows 13, 14, 15, okay, it's the third category, that's 7, 8, 9, that's 3 and 10. Those whose lives are moved toward death, excessive indulgence, okay? Now, their journey is that they could have longevity. It's true, they could live a longer life, it's just as long life as probably this first category, but it is often cut short by overindulgence, self-indulgence, and relentless, unrestrained pursuit of pleasure. So the consequence, column H, is it's misguided. It's a misguided view or way of living, okay, or effort, expended effort. They spent too much effort directed at the wrong pursuit. Now in column A, rows 17 to 20 was one row. It's 10, that's 1, okay, 1 in 10 is what? Good at cultivating life. That's the middle path. Those are the Tao cultivators. The journey are the Tao cultivators who are on the path of moderation. They cherish simple life of contentment, humility, and the simplicity of the Tao. So what is the consequence, the result? They have the Tao. That is they have real understanding and the true practice. Okay, so that's what Lao Tzu was saying about these 4 categories. Even though the last category, the 4th, he didn't explicitly say it's 1 in 10. He just said that those who are good at cultivating life that he has heard, right? But you do the math, right? 3 and 10 for the first 3, so that's 9 and 10. So the remainder is 1 and 10. Okay, all right. So let's go back to the second to the last bullet point on page 9, and that is first category is those who are overly cautious do not understand the opportunity of life to explore, experience new things, learn new ideas, new truths, to open up their minds, opportunities that should be utilized, put to good use. Okay. Second category, those who are reckless do not fully appreciate the value of life, don't realize life should be cherished, to live life not only just by taking risks or seeking thrills. Third category, those who overindulge have not yet grasped the real purpose of life. They don't understand the true meaning of life. Instead of indulging in sensory pleasures, they should be, quote unquote, indulging spiritually at the great lessons that life has to offer. So the next bullet point is the 1 person out of 10 who sees the great circle of life and death has the realization that naturally leads to Tao cultivation, a journey of life that is lasting, that endures the test of time. Now, remember, okay, if you refer back to the to the spreadsheet Excel, the first three categories of people, they all, yes, they have excess, right? Different type of excess, but they also have a fear. The first group is definitely fear of death. The second is also fear of death, because that's why they lead a life of high risk and recklessness to show that they have to kind of convince themselves that they don't fear. And the last group is also they fear death so that they want to overindulge. They want to overindulge everything before they die, right? So that's that's another thing. So once again, fear. Okay, all right. Here's the final point of this chapter. Almost 90 minutes. Okay, good. All right. We should all aspire to be this one person out of 10. That is the fourth category of living that is good at cultivating life. And with this realization, Tao cultivators no longer fear death. Okay, this is the real meaning of quote, to have no place for death, unquote, which means there's no longer any place in your mind to accommodate the fear of death, because you are able to see everything in life, and that's the most important question of life and death, so incredibly clearly. Okay, now I'm going to talk. I have 5-6 minutes before the 90-minute mark. Okay, it's about the story of the death of Zhuangzi's wife. Okay, you can read it in his book, Outer Chapters. Okay, so let's go to the last summary, part 4, page 11. Okay, top of page 11, the Tao of life and death according to Zhuangzi's perspective. Now, okay, let me tell you the story. If you want to tell in detail, it'd be like 10 minutes, but I'm going to go through very quick. Okay. One day, Zhuangzi's wife passed away. Okay, she died. Because they're not that young anymore. Okay, I guess they're past middle age. They're probably they're old. Anyway, so after her death, Zhuangzi was seen or heard. He was singing a song and banging. It's a pan. It's like a metal pan or something, metal pan, banging the metal pan like a drum. Okay, so Zhuangzi has a good friend, very good friend, named Huizi. Okay, Huizi. He's also a philosopher, a scholar, a philosopher. I think he's a logician too. But anyway, okay, so he heard about what Zhuangzi was doing. So he thought, this doesn't make sense. He should be in mourning, right? He should be grieving over the death of his wife. So he came. He wanted to come. He came to Zhuangzi's house to want to talk to him, ask him what's the matter. And then he was telling Zhuangzi that your wife just passed. It's, less than a day ago or a couple of days ago. Why are you behaving like this? It doesn't seem appropriate. You should still be grieving. Okay. Now Zhuangzi, then responded to Huizi and said, "Yes, I understand your attention. I should be grieving. Of course, I grieve initially, but later on, not soon after, he came to the realization about this, and what he realized was that his wife, before he came to being, came into life, he had nothing, right? She had nothing. She had no life, right? Quote unquote, right? Before she was born. She had no physical body, or she had none of the other physical traits that one could associate with her in this life. Makes sense? And then Huizi, yeah, okay. He's kind of confused. He was initially confused, saying, well, wait a minute, I don't understand what you're talking about. Then he explained further that initially, before she was born, she didn't have a life, right? It was no such thing as a life. There's no such thing as life. And then she was born. She came into life. So she had that gift of life. But then now she is going back to what she originally was. So, see, Huizi didn't understand that point. Zhuangzi was telling him initially that she actually didn't lose anything, But Huizi was saying, wait, she did lose a life, right? She lost her life. But Zhuangzi was saying, listen, before she had life, she had nothing, right? She was nothing. She had no body form. She has none of those physical traits, etc. Okay. All right. So from Zhuangzi's perspective, all humans, okay, we originally started out having nothing. And when we came into this world, that is to enter life, we got this gift of life. But we also have to return it back. It's only temporary. We actually are going back to where our original state was. That is nothing. So from Zhuangzi, if you understand that great circle of life and death, Zhuangzi's view is that you actually did not lose anything because you ended up with what you started out with, which is nothing. You're just that invisible, intangible, whatever, okay, or non-existence. That's another way of saying. So from Zhuangzi's perspective, it's you have this non-existence. That's before you come into life. You're born. Then you have this existence, which is what we call life, and then you return back to non-existence. That's called death, right? We call it death because we're looking at from the view of life only, right? Or birth, okay, birth and death. But from Zhuangzi's perspective, he takes a bigger picture, right? The whole picture. Now, when Huizi heard that from that, he now understood, yeah, that makes sense. So then he understood, okay? So what Zhuangzi said further, he extended even further this analogy. He's saying that not only is this a natural circle of life and death, right? What you call life and death, okay? It's actually no different, okay? Like the changing of the seasons. That's why I brought up that season metaphor, okay? Changing of the seasons. Just because we're now in July or mid-July, late July. Spring has passed, right? Spring's gone. But that's not the end of spring. Come next year, March, April, spring's going to come again, right? Same idea. So just because a season has passed, be it, I don't know what anybody's favorite season is, be it spring, summer, autumn, or winter, just because a season has passed doesn't mean that that's the end of all seasons. So why do you need to mourn the passing of a season? Yes, there is a proper time. Yeah, now in Confucianism, as part of what we call ethical behavior or propriety, right? Yes, there's a period to mourn. And Zhuangzi did that. He did. He initially he was aggrieved, very much so, about on the passing of his wife. But he didn't stay aggrieved the rest of his life. He understood that, wait a minute, this is just like the passing of the seasons. Okay, so what John said, there's a couple important points about this story. Okay, is that birth, life, and death applies to everybody, and all loved ones, everybody. It's our own mortality. Okay, now we tend to think, and that's the first three categories of people. Okay, we tend to think that this present lifetime belongs to us. That's ours to keep, ours to cherish forever. No, you can't live forever. We're not immortals, right? Okay, at best, it's temporary. Maybe 100 years, okay, if we're lucky, right? 100 years or so, okay, if we're lucky. If we're not so lucky, it's less, right? Okay, so it's not ours. It doesn't belong to us. It's really just temporary. And that was the point that Zhuangzi was talking to Huizi about, that this period of life between non-existence before life and non-existence after life, okay, it's this period of lifetime is still temporary. So in a sense, we are just borrowing time, okay? So think of it as like you're renting a car. You're going from point A to point B, assuming that you don't have a car. You borrow a car, you rent a car. So you drive from point A to B. Well, when you arrive at point B, at your destination, what do? You keep the car? No, you return it. Okay, so that's the return trip to non-existence, to the Tao. Okay, now during the trip, the journey, like from point A to point B on this car trip, it's like our journey of life, right? We live this life, we have this existence, but some people, especially the first three characters, think that, oh, we own this life, just like we own this rental car, right? But eventually, when you reach the destination, i.e., when we reach, the age of departure, you're gonna have to give it up, right? You have to give it up. So it's only at best temporary, okay? So that present lifetime, we say belongs to us, it's only temporary, okay? So it's not permanent. All right, so coming into life, third bullet point, is an opportunity, okay? But we must return at some point and complete the great circle. Now, fourth bullet point, this great circle is all about transitioning, change, okay? No different from all other transitions that occur in nature, such as the end of a season is not the end of all seasons. Spring may have ended, but it's not the last spring. Summer may have ended, but it's not the last summer. So in time, another spring or summer will arrive and pass, and so on and on and on. That's the great circle. So last bullet point, it continues on. This is only one tiny part of an infinite, or you can say timeless journey. This is how reality works. This is life and death. That's the great circle. Okay, so that's what the story of Zhuangzi's perspective is talking about. Okay, very interesting. So that's why, if you understand what Zhuangzi was saying, then if you understand that, then you are in the state of freedom. You're liberated from the fear of death. Okay, because you understand that's just a natural cycle, and that this thing we call life, existence, it's actually just a temporary phase, if you will. It's not permanent, okay? It's phase. We have to go back to where we originally came from, all right? So it's not this physical entity, it's actually the spiritual entity, our Buddha nature essence, okay? That's the Tao, okay? All right, so all right. So second half of this last point on bottom of page 9, last bullet point. This means those who are at one with heaven have no place for death by being good cultivators in life, even though their physical forms no longer exist, but their spirits are already merged with heaven. They are at one with the Tao. Okay, this is the understanding of the great circle of life and death. This is the realization of the cause of life and death. This is the liberation of life and death. Okay, sorry, I took about 96 minutes, but we started a little bit late. So anyway, so this I conclude. I think we went through everything. Yep. Okay, so you can, look at, the files, review them and everything. Okay, so I'll conclude here, and I'll conclude here, and if there are things that I did not say correctly or wrong, I ask for the Buddha's and Lao-Tzu's guidance and forgiveness, and for your guidance and input. Okay, thank you, everybody.